Although people can take the easy button example, it's not very robust. It's just easy to understand.
It's the Karate Kid pattern.
You lost me on that.
Wax on, wax off.
Wax on, wax on, wax off.
Wax off.
So down at the bottom here, I use my easy button module and I call easy toggle. I pass in a reference to the gravity button image and a reference to the gravity function. And this listener basically says, okay, it checks in the began phase only, and it looks for a field called is toggled. Well, the first time this is called, that's not going to exist, so it's going to be, this statement will be true because it says not is toggled, which will be true if the field does not exist or if it is set to false, in either case. So I set it to true. I use the underbar nomenclature to make sure that future additions to Corona don't break this. I'm assuming that no time in the future will there be a new field on display objects called underbar is toggled. And then I set the fill color to green, and I call the callback, whatever was passed in, callback / listener. We call him listener in Corona. I call him callback because of my background. It's just a function that's being called. The next time the user clicks that button, and the next time the phase is began, it will come in here, and because we set is toggled to true, not is toggled will be false, so it will skip this part and execute the next statement. It will set is toggled to false, set the color of the image to white, and call that function again. And because our function is really brain dead, it doesn't care about the phase. It's just a question of the number of times you call it is going to change it from on to off to on to off, not tracking the state of the button. The fact that the button is green is totally up to this touch handler. So, and go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I'm in a cheeky mood today. I was thinking you could change that to not object. What was it? Object dot underbar. You could change it to not object underbar is not toggled.
No, double negative. That's right. No, that double knots, the not logic. That's what that's called.
Well, I say that because I do seriously struggle sometimes with what to name something, because you're like, okay, well, the state of this, and there are conventions like, is or has or things like that you want to be able to use so that your code is consistent, and then but there are situations where that doesn't make sense, right? So you might actually wind up writing an if statement where it dumps to a result that does nothing, just so that you can maintain this convention in your code. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to talk to what you said there just briefly. So you made the suggestion of giving the name a negative connotation, like not set or not toggled.
Yeah.
And I would say to new programmers, this is what I was taught, is that is not a good idea, no pun intended. There's a thing called not logic, which is you go down this rabbit hole where the most of us think in terms of something is true or something is false when we're talking about flags or we're talking about a toggle. But as soon as a flag is true if it's false, then your brain starts to get confused. Like,
right.
It has to be set to false for the thing to be true. Then if you not that, then you're like, is it true? Is it false? So you just avoid the whole not negative connotation. In other words, in short, always set flags to have a positive name and a positive value is the on value. Never have a flag where it has to be set to false or the name implies false for it to be quote-unquote on or true.
Right.
It becomes too hard to track in the future.
Unless you're playing tag, and then not it is totally valid.
Boy, we're all cheeky today. Okay, so cheeky aside, I'm going to look at the car builder because that's really the only one we really care about. Okay, so if we look at the car builder, we're going to see that there is my usual setup here. First of all, I required the physics library because I'm going to use it, and I stored it in a local called physics. I created a table called local builder, and I set just an empty table. And then what I do here from now on is whenever I want to add a function to that module, to this builder module, I say function builder dot name of the function, arguments it takes. And in this case, there's only a single function, and that function is called create. And its job is to create a square or a rectangle with two circular looking objects. These are actually rectangles, but they have a round physics body attached to them. And its job is to create those and then using joints mount them together, and then it will add some functions to the chassis, which is the rectangle, that allow us to turn the wheels on or off, make them spin or stop spinning. And I'll step through this very briefly. Alright, so at the top here I have my magical filter, which basically is this. We talked about this previously. It's the group index -1. If I use this filter on all of these bodies as I create them, it's saying this body here, this body here. You can barely see my cursor, and none of them will hit each other, i.e. there will be no physics response, no bouncing, no touching, no friction between any of the body parts that I'm using to create the car. However, they will still hit anything else that is not using that filter setting, which is the ground does not use that filter setting. So we'll create the chassis first, which is the yellow bit. And we have some other variables here that we'll go back to in a moment. I don't think we need wheel speed. Just verify that. I'm sorry. There's a slight error in the code there. All right. So we create the chassis first, which is display new rect. And I pass in the group variable, or I'm sorry, the group reference, the display group. So immediately it will get inserted into the display group. And then I create a 80 pixel wide, 30 pixel tall car. And if you don't like this, we can always make it bigger. So let's just do that for the example, not 600. And now when I run it, it will be it'll be much bigger with tiny tires. Okay, so there's our bigger car.
It's now clown car.
All right. So then I position the chassis. So you'll see that I passed in an x and a y value. I basically say place the center of this chassis wherever that x and y was. And you'll see that when we call this function on line 23, I pass in the display group, and then I say basically put my car in the center of the x dimension, content center x, and then content center y, but then move it up, which is negative 100 pixels. 100 pixels above the center of the screen.